You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Before we get into kind of the nitty-gritty of the schedule, I want to give you guys my floor, my ceiling, and my record prediction for Syracuse football this season, all right? So start with the floor. So this is the worst case scenario, in my opinion, for this team, and it is a higher floor than usual. I think worst case, if so many things break down, so many things go wrong, 6-6, which means that at minimum, this team's a bowl team. At minimum, all right? Not predicting them to go 6-6, just telling you is some of the matchups don't really go their way, 6-6. That is the minimum for this team. The ceiling, the best I can see them doing in the regular season is 10-2, all right? And 10 wins, obviously, is very good for 95% of college football teams, with the exception of maybe just like Ohio State and Alabama, right? 10 wins is nothing for them, but for most schools it is. Syracuse football has not won 10 games in a regular season, okay? Keywords are regular season since 1987. That's right. I looked it up this morning. You can fact check me. I promise you I'm right on this. Syracuse football has not won 10 games in a regular season since they went 11-0-1 in 1987. They've had 10-win seasons, but that 10th game has come in the bowl game. All right? So that is my floor ceiling combination. I have a ceiling of doing something for the first time since 1987. And my overall record prediction is I'm splitting the difference. I'm going to say 8-4. All right, I'm going to split the difference, call it 8-4. Now, also a disclaimer for this episode: ESPN Index, you can take it for what it's worth, said that Syracuse has the easiest schedule in the Power Four. All right, once again, take it for what it's worth. That's just what the ESPN Index is saying. Let's now go over games that Syracuse either is just like there's really no discussion on, like they're going to win, and then games that they probably should win. All right, and there are 6 of them here. So it just worked out that way. There are 2 cupcakes, and we don't really need to go too far in depth on them. These are games where expect a lot of backups to play in the second half, maybe even in the second quarter. All right, it's one of those things where you see what you got outside of your starters. So those 2 games are Holy Cross on September 28th. They're gonna beat Holy Cross, and also UConn on November 23rd. Now I know that this isn't basketball, okay? UConn is not a good football program, at least for right now. Maybe they will be if they go to the Big 12. Right now, they're not a good football program, so I think Syracuse is going to have no problems with Holy Cross or UConn. Those are cupcakes, slam dunk, bank them in, 2 wins right there, all right? Next up, we got 4 games that Syracuse should win, but it is in the range of outcomes where if something really horribly does happen, like they could lose. All right, let's start off talking about the opener, which is, once again, 2 days away against Ohio. They are 17.5-point favorites, which means it is in the range of outcomes as a 17.5-point favorite that you do lose. Okay, at the same time, I'm not picking Syracuse to lose to Ohio. I said on yesterday's podcast, I think they're going to beat them by 30+. I think they are going to spank Ohio. Their quarterback in Parker Navarro has thrown 40 career passes in 3 seasons. But Vegas is telling you that it's only a 17.5-point line, and they are one of the better group of 5 teams out there with back-to-back 10-win seasons. So I'm going to give Ohio a little bit of respect in that regard. Having said that, I don't think we're going to have any problems with Ohio, all right? Next up, we got Stanford on September 20th. They were rated last in the ACC preseason poll, but it's still an ACC team, all right? That's still an in-conference opponent, and those are feeders for upsets, right? Games within the conference. Remember, Syracuse has been the beneficiary of an upset. 2017, the biggest one we've had in years, when we beat number 2 Clemson at home. All right, I know the Stanford game isn't on the road, but still, In the conference, you always got to be a little bit more weary than usual, even though Stanford is not projected to be a good team this season. All right? So I do think they will beat Stanford. Next up, you got at Pitt. Now, that game's on October 24th. Pitt was picked 13th in the ACC preseason poll, and they were a team that went 3-9 last year, so they're looking for a bounce back. Now, the reason why this game gives me maybe a little bit more pause than usual is because Syracuse hasn't won at Pitt since 2001. So it's been a struggle usually when they go to Pittsburgh. We'll see what happens in that one. But again, I put it in the category of Syracuse should be able to beat Pitt. Okay? Finally, we got at Boston College, which is on November 9th. They were picked 14th in the ACC poll. I am just, quite frankly, not a believer in their quarterback, Thomas Castellanos. I'm not. I think he's a great running back. I truthfully, he's a great running back. He can't throw. Okay? He came to the Dome last year, was not impressed by him whatsoever. Not impressed by that team. They are going on the road, which makes it a little bit tougher, and they did lose to Boston College last year at home. So it's a game that Syracuse should win. I'm not going to put it in the cupcake category. Now, as far as a floor and ceiling for the easier games on Syracuse's schedule, let's say the floor is 4-2 and the ceiling is 6-0. I think the most likely losses would be the 2 road games, right? At Pitt, at Boston College. Of those 6, I'm not saying they're going to lose them. I'm just saying if I had to pick 2 games of the floor that they could lose, it would be at Pitt and Boston College. All right. But overall, I think they're more towards the ceiling of the easier games at 6-0, maybe 5-1. That's my prediction for that.